I'm going to introduce quite a few concepts and some foreign words and some musical concepts and all sorts of cultural stuff. It's a huge area to cover that is impossible for me as an individual to cover, let alone in the time that we've got. So I've just chosen to centre in on a few kind of key ideas and thoughts. And it's going to be ranging over various areas to do with Japanese culture and tradition, and then what's the relevance and point of Japanese drums here in Australia. I'm now just going to talk about the taiko, the tradition, and kind of how things fit in terms of Australia and obviously in particular to my own group, Taikoz. So here we go. As percussionist, just about any object is fair game for sound making. Striking, stroking, caressing, crunching, tinkling and tapping, just about any means to elicit sound is okay. The pursuit of artistic expression and exploring our personal creativity is often seen as justification enough when handling sound objects. Indeed, throughout history, composers have shown a curiosity for percussion, mostly for the wonderful sounds and rhythms that can be created on them, but sometimes also for their exotic and novel appeal. Furthermore, the idea of so-called evoking the sound of another culture is one that has crept into many a composer's musical thinking. Examples include Mozart's use of the Turkish Janissary music in the Abduction from the Seraglio, the tambourine in Tchaikovsky's Arabian Dance, and tuned gongs in Puccini's opera Turandot. Of course, these days, the marimba, the xylophone, the cymbal, the gong, the tam-tam, the tom-toms, tambourines, and everything else in the percussion section are all considered standard instruments in the percussionist's battery. But we rarely take time to appreciate where they originally came from. How often do we consider the historical and cultural backgrounds of the instruments we now call our own? Today, I'd like to take a moment to consider a family of instruments that have long held a fascination for me, the taiko, or Japanese drums. Although contemporary percussionists have not really taken up taiko instruments to any large degree as a unique sound source, taiko has certainly made an impact in the field of film music, often appearing in the scores of modern-day Hollywood composers. Having played in the SSO percussion section on a number of their popular movie concerts, some of you may have attended them, I've been amused to sometimes read in the list of instruments, taiko drum. Now, considering that there are at least 12 different types of taiko, and not counting subgenres of taiko, this description on the score of the latest blockbuster is both bemusing and perplexing, and borders on the culturally insensitive. And you can see here just what I've put up here are some beautiful illustrations, actually by one of our students, of just a few of the various taiko that exist. You can see very beautiful objects in themselves, let alone how they sound. Nevertheless, it's not just the lack of a basic timbre pitch descriptor that belies ignorance on the part of the composer, but in the mind of the taiko player, it brings up even more complex issues surrounding taiko rhythmic language, technique, which is related to sound, style and form, and performance context, among other things. The questions become almost existential. When is taiko taiko? And when is taiko just another percussive sound source? Does it matter? Certainly, the appropriation of taiko instruments by players and composers from outside certain perceived traditions and cultural contexts is a hot topic within the world of taiko practice. Notions of tradition versus modern and issues of intellectual and cultural property that pertain to some styles of taiko playing have come to the point that symposia convene to discuss such matters, and in some cases, rules have been put into place that regulate the use and promulgation of some forms of taiko and related music. Questions of identity, musical, cultural, and racial abound within the world of taiko, especially in light of the expansion, translation, and migration of taiko from Japan to other countries. Historically, taiko, or more correctly, wadaiko, is prevalent in three broad areas of cultural practice in Japan. First one is religion. where large taiko called miyadaiko or byodaiko are used in Buddhist chanting as well as Shinto ritual and practice. And so you can see on this slide here, top left, there's a Buddhist monk playing on a large taiko that we call odaiko, which just means big or grand drum. Then to the right is a theatrical dance form, very, very old, ancient form called kagura, which comes from the Shinto religion. And then below that is gagaku, that's the imperial court orchestra playing there. And that's also a very ancient musical tradition that still exists today. The emperor still has his court orchestra. And this, as I said, and as you can see, comes out of the Shinto. So the Buddhism and Shintoism are the two dominant religious religions in Japan. Secondly, the taiko appears in the theatre, especially the popular theatrical art form called kabuki and the classical no theatre. On top there, you can see the musicians of the kabuki theatre. This we call the Nagauta ensemble. And you can see, unlike the Western orchestra, where the percussion instruments are right up the back, our percussion instruments are in the front of the singers, narrators, and the string shamisen players. And then below that, the photograph is the No theatre, which predates kabuki by several hundred years as well. And this is commonly referred to as the classical theatre tradition of Japan. Thirdly, taiko appears in the community, especially annual matsuri or festivals. And festivals happen all over Japan, most often in July, August, around Obon, in the middle of summer. Not always, but often. And I've just selected a few of the more spectacular matsuri that exist. The top left, Sansa Odori Matsuri from Morioka, a beautiful festival to attend. There's thousands of drummers in that festival, and you can see just a collection there of them there. Then to the right, Nebata Matsuri from Aomori, and if you can see there, that's one drum. And you can see 3 men playing in front and a couple of guys even sitting on top as well. And all flute players and cymbal players there on the side. Bottom left, Gion Matsuri from Kyoto. These are all very old festivals that go back centuries. And you can see on the big cart there, and then Chichibu Yomatsuri, there you can see just in the bottom right-hand corner these wonderfully ornate carts. And the drums that you can see just above, they're actually inside the cart. You actually don't see them at festival time. And so all of these have their own musics and rhythms, melodies, and so on, and often dance as well, and a very strong movement component. And it's the latter category, the matsuri, that has largely inspired the development of the modern-day taiko group and popularized the instruments and performance in Japan and internationally. Often labeled traditional, especially by non-Japanese people, taiko performances of today are really expressions of contemporary music making, though in some cases arguably justifying a connection to aspects of Japanese traditional culture and performance practice. According to the famed taiko soloist Eitetsu Hayashi, today people think that traditional Japanese drumming involves a disciplined group of drummers all playing in sync. But in fact, that form of drumming doesn't exist traditionally. There is usually just one single main drummer, and he or she improvises largely. And there you can see, there's so many examples I could choose, but I chose this one on the top left of the Gojinjo Daiko from Nofune Wajima, that you can see one taiko, and they wear masks there, and their rituals take place at dusk and into the night. And there's a whole story about, it's pretty scary actually with the masks and the way they drum. But there's a whole story around why that's the case, which I won't go into now. And the idea of taiko being used as an instrument of expression in its own right is a development of the post-World War II era. And I won't delve into the historical reasons for this, but suffice to say that taiko has emerged as a global voice with many players from many countries and cultures contributing to the promulgation of taiko music and its performance. And just below here is Kaoru Watanabe and Kenny Endo. They're both American musicians. And I've included that one because these guys are really at the forefront of contemporary taiko practice. And Karu, down in the front there, he's playing with us on the Sydney Symphony Orchestra concerts. Karu is also a specialist in the shinoboe, or the bamboo flute, and recognised as a world leader in that area, and we're really pleased that Karu is joining us for this collaboration. So there we go, the traditional and the modern. And as I said before, modern playing often has its roots and references to the tradition and to the culture. So who are Taikoz? And what are its aims, and what is its place in Australia's growing taiko scene, and more importantly, our wider cultural and artistic setting? The impact of the Japanese taiko ensemble called Ondekoza on the formation and development of Australia's taikos was no random effect. Since co-founding Taikoz in 1997, Riley Lee, bottom right there, has passed on music, techniques, approach, philosophy, information, and general advice, not to mention the confluence of people, events, and opportunities that have resulted from his 4 years on Sado Island with Ondekoza. Riley's membership of this now legendary group in the 1970s has thus had a profound influence on Taikoz and its members. Nevertheless, while the Ondekoza legacy and the influence of other Japanese taiko masters have undoubtedly been far-reaching for Taikoz, other forces and influences unique to Australia are equally part of the group's heritage and reason for being. Top left, there's one of the great players who's still performing today as a solo artist, Eitetsu Hayashi. That's him back in the 1970s in Ondekoza. And I'll make references in a moment to Synergy on the right there, Peter Sculthorpe, bottom left, and Richard Mille, two great composers. So for musicians of the 1970s and 80s, new possibilities were created by the musical explorations of great Australian composers like Peter Sculthorpe and Richard Mille, among several others. Previous Australian musicians had generally chosen to so-called return to ancestral musical homes in the UK and Europe. But the Sculthorpe-Mille generation of the 1960s chose to engage, learn from, and imbibe the cultures of Australia's near neighbours. Their partial rejection of European musical systems and thought, combined with an engagement with cultures closer to Australia's shores, made it the norm for succeeding generations of musicians to travel and explore the musical traditions of Central, Southeast, and East Asian countries. With an expanding knowledge of newly acquired philosophies, techniques, and sounds, they were inspired to create music that sounded new and fresh and resonated within our own culture. Following in their path, two Sydney-based musicians, Riley Lee and I, formed Taikoz in 1997, and the ensemble was born out of a desire to make music through the medium of the taiko and shakuhachi. Both of us had taiko training and performance experience with many fine Japanese teachers and players during the 1970s and 80s. And the inspiration for making an Australian taiko group was to explore musical ideas drawing on our combined backgrounds in Western contemporary classical music and traditional Japanese music, specifically the shakuhachi, shinoboe, and taiko. While our idea of forming an ensemble devoted to wadaiko took hold in 1997, Taikoz also has its roots in the percussion group Synergy. I was a member of this ensemble from 1986 to 2003 and had introduced several short taiko pieces into Synergy's repertoire in the early 1990s. However, over time, it became apparent that a group made up of specialist players devoted to the music, practices, styles, and techniques of wadaiko would be required to develop an original voice in taiko. Riley writes, I first began working with Ian in the mid-1990s as a guest performer on shakuhachi with Synergy. I began playing taiko with him soon after that. I believe our debut as a taiko duo was for a large martial arts conference at the Sydney Entertainment Centre. This was also the first time I had played taiko since 1977 when I left Ondekoza. Ian and I borrowed an old and very flabby taiko from a local Buddhist temple. Fortunately, we were there mainly to contribute visually to the atmosphere rather than for any musical contribution that we may have made. Soon afterwards, I played with Ian at the opening of an aluminium smelter in Gladstone, Queensland. This was the first time Ian performed on his newly commissioned wadaiko, which he had made from a single Tasmanian eucalyptus tree. The beginnings of Taikoz could not have been more quintessentially Australian. That's the instrument there. From the beginning, my time in Japan, especially my intensely demanding experiences as founding member of Taikoz, informed how I interacted with Taikoz and what demands I made, if only implicitly, of myself and the other members of the group. Taikoz's group ethos has always been to strive to be the best. Ian and I share this goal both as individuals and as members of the group. Musically, it is impossible to be the best, just as it is impossible musically to define what the best is. To paraphrase my shakuhachi teacher, Katsuya Yokoyama, the fact that our goals may be impossible to attain does not diminish them, but instead makes them all the more worthy. Taikoz was and still is a uniquely Australian group. By 1997, I had already experienced nearly a decade of living in Japan as a gaijin, or foreigner, playing traditional Japanese musical instruments. I'd spent an additional 17 years as a non-Japanese professional shakuhachi player working primarily outside of Japan. I knew that Taikoz could never be Japanese, whatever the meaning of that ambiguous term, and more importantly, and for many reasons, would never want to be. Paradoxically, those same experiences over decades of practice taught me the necessity of an in-depth understanding of the tradition in its original setting. So Taikoz members have always and continue to study with the best from several different Taiko traditions, either by going to them in Japan or by inviting them to come to Australia. Taikoz is alone amongst all Taiko groups in the world, including the most well-known Japanese groups, in the ability of all its members to read and use Western staff notation. While this in itself is not a requirement of or a guarantee for a vibrant, successful musical group, it does allow Taikoz to learn quickly and perform well pieces that are as diverse as they are numerous. That's the end of Riley's quote. So essentially, the physicality of the language and the conceptual basis from which wadaiko springs gives a strong structure within which Taikoz can explore various aspects of training, creative development, growth and awareness, and performance, ritual and expression. And the group reflects two principal areas of creative endeavour: the creation of new music by Australian and international composers, which is based upon, secondly, the study and sometimes performance of drum and flute music from Japan. And within this framework, Taikoz seeks to build an original form of taiko. Taikoz's aim is not simply to transplant one culture's music into another's, but to allow a new form of music to grow upon a sure foundation of understanding the aesthetic principles and applying the techniques of wadaiko. Taikoz has developed its own sound by drawing upon the input of all its members, past and present, whose musical backgrounds range from years of study and performance in jazz and pop, as well as Japanese traditional music and Western symphonic contemporary music. Significantly, other artists, such as choreographers Meryl Tankard and Ananda Valley, theatre director John Bell, and composers Gerard Brophy, Michael Askell, David Pye, Philip South, Timothy Constable, Sandy Evans, and Andrea Molino, have also greatly contributed to the artistic development of Taikoz. Over the course of our first 20 years, Taikoz has initiated or participated in a great many projects that reflect the group's commitment to original creative endeavour, including over 30 original works composed for wadaiko, including several in combination with such instruments as shakuhachi, shinoboe, nokan, koto, percussion, marimba, saxophone, cello, drum set, and didgeridoo. And I've just included a few slides of just a couple of those contexts. You can see the top left, the cello. John Napier, a wonderful Sydney musician, playing the cello in a production we did with South Indian classical dancers. Top right is the amazing Sandy Evans. You can see her up there with her tenor saxophone. With us, Graham Hilgenoff, a member of Taikoz for many years, playing the drum set with us on the Taiko. And bottom right, Satsuki Odomura, again another wonderful Sydney-based musician, playing the bass koto. That's just a sampling of some of our collaboration with other instruments. Now, at this point, I would like to address the topic of what makes taiko taiko, as there are numerous theoretical and technical concepts that arguably inform a credible answer. And while this may or may not matter to the ongoing performance of taiko in what I might call the taiko context and the non-taiko context, it is at least worth consideration in gaining an understanding of the instrument's historical and cultural background and how this impacts on modern-day composition and performance. It's often noted that taiko is as much about the visual as the oral, and certainly in the case of a number of regional drumming forms in Japan, this is the case, as it is a goal of the performer to strive for perfection of form, which refers to the movement, angles, and timing of the body, in conjunction with the accuracy of rhythm, quality of tone production, dynamics, phrasing, and so on. Such is the emphasis on the player's body that some Japanese players maintain that non-Japanese, or at least non-Asian people, are incapable of playing taiko correctly. Certainly, there are numerous playing techniques that are common to most, if not all, taiko forms that help identify taiko as taiko. And I'd like to take time to explore 3 important concepts that I consider essential to the understanding of Japanese music and other Japanese performing art forms, including taiko. Although deeply complex, even a basic understanding of the following areas is essential in coming to grips with the method of playing taiko correctly. These 3 areas are hara, jo, ha, kyu, and ma. So I'm going to talk about hara for a moment. Hara can loosely be translated as belly, not to be confused with the organ, the stomach. Hara refers to one's centre of energy and vitality, which is located just below the belly button. In taiko playing, power, endurance, and sound production are drawn from finding, developing, and maintaining connection with hara. Although somewhat esoteric in concept, taiko training can involve practical exercises to develop this connection. Many revolve around lower body, leg exercises, which are designed to strengthen those areas. The connection between the lower body and the torso, head, arms, hands, wrists, and fingers is very important in taiko playing, as it allows the player to remain relaxed and not force sound through brute effort or use of unnecessary muscles. By using the natural force of gravity and the momentum of body mass, a full natural sound is produced. People often mistakenly identify the movement of the arms as the dominant driver in producing sound on the taiko. Undoubtedly, the large circular movements are visually distinctive, but the arm movements are the outworking of the core strength of hara, the lower body, and correct angles of the torso and head. Careful observation will note that the tip of the bachi, the drumstick, is the last point to move when striking the taiko. The initial movement begins with a subtle drop of the centre, hara, a bend of the knee, flexion of the arches, which is all followed by a drop of the arm or throw when wanting to produce a particularly big sound, and a final whip of the wrist and bachi. So even when we put those big drumsticks in our hands and play a drum as big as that with our arms above our heads for 15 minutes, if you're going to do that, you need to be relaxed. Otherwise, you'll fall over in a heap after a minute or 2. But that's a good demonstration of it all coming from hara, or the core. Next is jo, ha, kyu. Not only is the shape of the stroke important, but also the timing of the upstroke and the downstroke is crucial in good taiko technique. Generally speaking, the stroke reflects a concept that is embedded in many Japanese art and martial art forms, jo, ha, kyu. In simple terms, jo, ha, kyu can be defined as slow, medium, fast, or beginning, middle, end. However, a basic understanding of the kanji, or the characters, with which jo, ha, kyu is written can give greater depth of meaning to the concept. Rendered in kanji, jo is commonly read as beginning. Ha can be interpreted as yaburu, meaning to tear or break apart or crack, while kyu means sudden, rapid, urgent. When combined with the basic idea of slow, medium, fast, or beginning, middle, end, these meanings provide a sequence of images and feelings ranging from that of tension and purpose at the beginning, followed by a sense of forward movement and ending with a sense of resolution and a brief moment of stasis. This tripartite structure can be traced back to the 8th century in bugaku, the ancient court dance of Japan. Jo signifies the entrance of the dancers. The rhythm of this section is defined by basic strokes of the taiko with no subdivisions of the beat. The feeling is rather free, but the performers conceptualize this section in terms of the weighted steps of the approaching dancers, the purposeful inhalation and exhalation of the wind players, and the gestures of the drummers. The jaw section not only serves as an introduction by setting a strong feeling of expectation, but also establishes a sense of the aesthetic space. I've got a picture of bugaku dance in the top right there. The beginning of the ha section is defined by the music and dance taking a more formal shape. The melodic material of the wind and string instruments is developed. The taiko contributes to subdivisions of the beat to accompany the dancers. The pace quickens over a relatively long period of time, 7 to 10 minutes, although it is barely perceptible to the audience. There is an overall feeling of gradually unfolding in the middle ha section. The Q section is marked the culmination of the long accelerando, after which the original slow tempo is re-established. Q can be likened to a grand gesture that dissolves as soon as it has been made. Zeami Motokyo, he lived from 1363 to 1444, who is credited with creating No and codifying its practice theory, likened Jo-Ha Q to a small stream growing into a mighty river that comes to its end as a cascading waterfall, which dissipates finally into a pond, still and calm. You can see a No dancer up at the top left there. So Jo-Ha Q can also be applied to playing taiko, mental preparation, focus, inhalation, exhalation. Oroshi, which is beating with a slow, heavy beginning, followed by acceleration of the beats and a final roll and sometimes a loud finishing beat. You actually heard the oroshi, a very long oroshi, at the beginning of the wadaiko solo, where he started very slow, and then you could hear him build the pace. That was a good example of oroshi. Musical structure, slow introduction, medium tempo development section, final fast tempo. And again, that wadaiko solo, he was into the ha section, which is the medium tempo one, and he builds and builds to a much faster section at the end. And stroke making, which is an upstroke of the arm or the bachi, which is slow, downstroke from the highest point of the bachi, and a whip stroke of the wrist onto the skin. So that's just generally this sort of movement here. Jo-Ha Q is a fascinating idea that, although difficult to conceptualize, richly repays thought and consideration. When one becomes aware of the concept, it can be perceived on many levels and in virtually all other traditional Japanese arts. When next visiting an art gallery exhibiting Japanese ink paintings, look carefully at the swirling brush strokes, Jo-Ha Q. And I've included an example there, the middle bottom there, Sumie ink painting. This is a really good visual representation of Jo-Ha Q, because you can see the artist begins. This circle is called Enso. It's a Buddhist symbol. He started at the bottom, down the bottom right there. Can you see where he's planted his ink brush? Right there. And as he, or she maybe, has drawn around, you can see through the brush strokes getting faster. And then at the very end, you see the little flecks of the brush at the end. So this is Jo-Ha Q. So even within there, you can see this dynamism through the visual image. And we've already seen a demonstration of that through the taiko playing, and even in martial arts such as aikido, you'll see the movements also reflect something similar. This emphasis on Jo-Ha Q and hara, the lower body, the shape and timing of the stroke, and the connections between them all could be an argument for a definition of what makes taiko taiko. Sometimes people remark that a performer who might be rather flamboyant with their arms is playing taiko. However, to my eye, unless I can see the hara, the belly, and the shape and timing of the full body working in sync to produce a sound that is full of body, then we're talking superficialities. Last one, ma. The third distinctive concept is that termed ma. Ma is a broad, abstract idea that is difficult to express in words and for which there is no direct translation. Two definitions are the space between tangible entities, or space that forms part of the whole. And while these descriptions are not wholly adequate, ma can be tangibly perceived in performance. Pauses, stillness, and quietness are all constituent parts of ma, as is the timing of strokes and sound making. Musical tension can be created through ma. Eitetsu Hayashi once told me that ma is something that can only be learned through experience and is not possible to learn via the intellect alone or as a technique or as a technique to practice. And arguably the highest masters of ma are the practitioners of no kabuki and bunraku, which is the puppet theatre of Japan. Indeed, their every move, vocalization, sound, and very presence is the living embodiment of Ma. And so just let's contemplate this famous poem by the Chinese poet Lao Tzu. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that which makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. When embarking on my musical journey with Taikoz, I felt it was imperative that all the members gain a thorough understanding of these concepts and more, as well as develop technique in basic taiko playing and numerous regional traditional styles. Our purpose in forming Taikoz was to create, commission and perform challenging and engaging music for our chosen medium, the taiko and shakuhachi. From the first day to the present, our ethos has remained unchanged, but the journey has been a fascinatingly circuitous one. In the beginning, we had only a handful of works. Our first performance at the Sydney Town Hall back in 1997 included a couple of traditional taiko pieces, the groundbreaking taiko ensemble work Monochrome by Maki Ishii, and several new works by composers within Taikoz. These were heady times, full of excitement and a drive to learn more. However, our newly composed works lack depth, internal rigour and technique in their execution. And so the next period of Taikoz's life, beginning with our first group trip to Japan in 2001, saw a consolidation of learning and practice by all members of the ensemble through regular visits to Japan and having the opportunity to learn and perform with some of the great masters of various styles and traditions of playing. And it has been a steep learning curve ever since, still going. From this point in our development, Taikoz's training drew more heavily on the traditions and techniques of Japanese wadaiko, but at the same time, wonderfully challenging opportunities to expand our creativity also came our way in a perfect synchronicity of inward development and outward expression. And 3 projects encapsulate this period of technical, philosophical consolidation and artistic growth. Winners by Italian composer Andrea Molino. There's Andrea. This was a project that we premiered in Brisbane for the Brisbane Festival back in 2006, and later that year we took it to Paris actually and performed at the Pompidou Centre, which was a thrill. It's a little hard to tell in that photograph, but you can see down the bottom is a full symphony orchestra, and we're way above on a platform there. This is actually a similar setup to what we're using with the Sydney Symphony in a couple of weeks' time. And I think you can see some of our big instruments, our big taiko up there, but there's a full set of drums up there. There are actually a couple of percussionists over on the left. They're right up in the audience galleries. And you can see some words up there because there were actually several screens. You can see 3 sort of cinema screens kind of up there, and then the front screen is a big like scrim over the top. And Andrea had all sorts of visual imagery being projected onto this screen, onto the screen. The work itself was about, from memory, about 75, 80 minutes long, and very contemporary in its nature. And Andrea, who actually is in town at the moment, he's a conductor as well. He's conducting at the Australian Opera. And Andrea was great to work with because he's a very sensitive musician and a great intellect. And when he really enjoyed our performance, and I'm not even quite sure how actually he came to know of us, but he was really looking for musicians like us where we had some grounding in this beautiful art form of wadaiko, but being contemporary sort of musicians, he was interested in what we could bring to that. And so he composed a fully composed score. It's one of the most difficult things we've ever had to play. But just referring back to what I've just been talking about for the last 15 minutes or so, Andrea really understood some of these concepts that I've just been talking about and put that into really great sort of creative artistic use. And so despite its difficulty and complexities, it was a great project to really come to terms with and finally perform in Brisbane and Paris. Next one, a year later, Kaidan, a ghost story. This, as you can see there, 70-minute dance theatre music work that was choreographed and directed by the great Australian choreographer Merrill Tankard, and the design and visual imagery was by Regis Lunsak. We played this at the Drama Theatre of the Sydney Opera House back in 2007 for the Sydney Festival. Again, some images there. You can see bottom right some of our big taiko again there, and a dancer flying through the air. And we were totally integrated into the performance. As you can see, we were not like down in a pit or something or off to the side. We were thoroughly involved in the complete performance. Above right there is that white spectre is a dancer flying on a cable right through the above us. We were playing, and that was the very opening, actually. We came out drumming, and then she just came flying across as all this snow started forming. You can see some of the snowflakes falling down. And bottom left is Riley, who I've been referring to at the moment, playing a side-blown flute there. That also was a very exciting, wonderful project to be involved with. And William Shakespeare's Pericles, directed by John Bell and performed with the Bell Shakespeare Company back in 2009. There's John, there's William, and there's Taikoz with some of the actors in Pericles. There's the shakuhachi again making an appearance in our performance there on the bottom right there. Marina, so the character's name is Marina. Pericles is cloaked there. That's Marina. That's Andrea Dimitriadis. So she's very famous now. I see her on TV all the time. So we were working with her back in 2009. And again, a wonderful process. So in each of these three works, and many more actually, but I just chose these three as being very significant to us, but in each work, Taikoz was central to their creative development and performance. And in the process, we had the enormous privilege of working with amazing artistic partners who drove and inspired us to delve deeper into our creativity. However, it was not until 2011 that we began the process of developing our first wholly original production, Chi Udaka, in collaboration with Sydney-based choreographer Ananda Vali and her South Indian classical dance company, Lingalium. The 3-year process of bringing a single idea to the stage was a challenging one in that it demanded new levels of conceptual thinking, and in the process challenged both ensembles to develop a common musical movement language. And although Chi Udaka received good reviews at its premiere at the 2014 Sydney Festival, the full realisation of the production did not happen until our 2016 Australian and Indian tours. This process spanned 5 years of thought, rethought, practice, performance, consolidation and development. And there's a couple of shots above there. You can see us surrounding one of the dancers in what's essentially a ring of dirt. Because when the dancers dance, they really pound the floor with their feet, and they have bells as well, so they bring their own percussive sound to it as well. And then bottom right, there's one of our members, Ruji, who's performing with the Sydney Symphony. He's having a lot of fun there, interacting with the dancers behind. So during this period, members of the ensemble and non-taiko composers, such as David Pye, Timothy Constable, who's actually in the Sydney Symphony percussion section, Mike Chin and Sandy Evans have all created other original works for Taikoz. Taikoz is extremely grateful to our collaborators and teachers, each of whom have contributed enormously to our development over the past 20 years. Nevertheless, have we created something unique? Have we contributed valuably to the artistic life of Australia and impacted on its development? Indeed, is Taikoz definably Australian? These questions and more are difficult to answer when one is on the inside. But maybe in time we'll have a better idea of what Riley, Taikoz and I have contributed as artists living in this country. That's kind of the end of lots of information. I hope that gives you some sense of the broader picture of kind of what we're on about. I've jumped around a lot to go at this because it just gives you a sense of how it feels. Already my arms are starting to get tired, right? So I have to do that and play over 15 minutes. You've got to make sure your lower body is in a good position. So when he plays, he, of course, doesn't want to get too low, because then also too, you're going to, because this holding this position, even though I'm sure Yosuke, he's very strong, I'm sure he could do it, but he needs to be just a little bit kind of higher there and very flexible in his lower body. And so again, coming from the center, he wants to be in this position, holding his arms and being able to play like this. Whereas Mitome, the lead player, when he plays, he needs to get lower at this point, and at this point then very springy on the feet. So when he plays, he can move much more this way because he's playing the lead part. He has to be very expressive in his playing, and so a lot of movement here. So this all comes from this sort of lower body position being very springy. But Yosuke, being there, he needs to just be kind of comfortable in this position there. But yeah, it's a good question. Maybe while I'm on that, would someone like to just come up and see what it feels like to be in that position? I've got some drumsticks here, or bachi. Yes, come on up. There's another hand, come on up. Would you like a go? Yeah, just come on up. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring our big wadaiko. Our wadaiko weighs on its stand 250 kilograms, and it takes 6, 7, or 8 of us to be able to put the drum up on its stand. So I couldn't bring that, and probably wouldn't have fit through the door anyway. But we will be playing it at our concert, so you will get to see and hear it there. So what do we got here? As I said, these are called bachi. Great. So, what's your first impression? What's your first impression of the drumsticks? Lighter than what you thought. Yeah. So these bachi, you can see, are quite big, certainly compared to kind of regular drum set type drumsticks. And they're made out of various woods, but all of these are made from a wood called Hinoki, which is a Japanese pine. And so it's a beautiful wood. It has a very beautiful grain. Actually has a beautiful smell, but I think that's just sweat now. Yeah. So don't smell it too. And it may have some blood on there as well. So yeah. But when you buy them new, they're just beautiful when you bring them out and smell them. So this is Hinoki. It's a very durable wood, very strong actually, but relatively light. Now, they have to be long and quite wide in diameter to be able to get a good sound out of such a big drum and a big drum skin, because you've got to move a lot of air through that shell. And again, as I sort of said before, if you just try and hit like this, the drum's going to win every time. It'll still be standing there, and you're just going to collapse. So we have to use our full body. So, okay, so first lesson, just hold your arms out like this, and the drumstick like this, or bachi. Good. And now just sit them back like here, and right at the bottom there, so you got there. Yeah, keep your arms straight, up, like this. Good. A little higher. Yeah, it's just dropping a little bit. Okay, we'll take our break and then see how they're going after our 15-minute break. Okay, good. However, as I said, we've got to involve our full body. So now you've got there. What's important is your hara, your belly. And so you've got to think of where your belly button is placed there. And in reference to that, move your left foot forward there. Good. And your right foot back here. Good. And get that right leg straight. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, your right leg straight. Okay, just keep holding. Yeah. Okay, now you can see here. What's your name? Cruise. Okay, so Cruise's belly button
Is there?
Yeah, now you just moved it a little bit, yeah?
Yeah.
Which is good, because we're imagining our big drum skin is up here, and you want to get your center there, okay? So, So there, just move your center, okay. Great, what's your name? Sam. Okay, you need to get your foot wider.
Oh,
Actually,
geez.
yeah.
Look, she doesn't go like
Wider.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now,
There, mate.
all right, now also too, your center is a little off. That's it. So what you'll feel this muscle working a lot more there. Okay, you can be a little bit wider. Okay, and now get that foot a little straighter here. That's it. Because sometimes too, we need to push up on that foot, so you've got to have your foot kind of there.
Glutes look good.
Yeah, glute works the glutes. Really good. What's your name? Prima. Okay, good. Just straighten that leg there. Straighten. Nice. Okay, so, okay, now lower. That's it. Right leg straight, but lower. Drop your center. So drop your belly, okay? Okay, good. And now just little things, little ergonomic things, and also to, you got to hold your position, okay? So, what's important too, we don't want to pull muscles and things too, so it's really important that your knee goes over your foot, because just bend forward. So yeah, you want your knee to go over your foot. Yeah, otherwise it puts strain on your cruciate ligament, and you can pull your ligaments, so you've got to be careful there. Okay, so again, a little bit wider, fellas. Yeah. It's a little bit too long. You're too long. So, but over there. That's it. Good. Yeah. Keep your arms up.
It's worse.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Good. Arms straight though. Yeah, straight. Good. Okay. Yeah, nice. Woohoo. Great. Yeah. Okay. So now, and I made reference to the body angles and so on are really important. So this also refers to your belly. So what I'd like you to do now is, this is your center, and I want you to get your head back in alignment. Yeah, that's it. Nice. Yeah, no, that's it. Just nice and relaxed. So it's all about relaxation.
This isn't relaxed.
Good. So arm straight. Yeah. Good. Okay. All right. So we're kind of ready to make our first stroke. So now what I'd like you to do is take your right arm up, just straight up. Okay. And back this way. Okay. And I want you to, yeah, that's right. That's good. However, your belly button's off again. Oi, that's okay. Good. This way. Left arm, don't drop it. Yeah. Okay. And then up this way here. Yeah, good. And whoop, that's it. Yeah, good. That's looking good. Yeah. But arm straight. Yeah. Good. Wow. Nice position. Great. Excellent. You can strain your right leg though. It's going to collapse in a moment otherwise. Okay. You're doing well. That's great. So from this point here, I want you to keep drawing up, but I want you to keep your center low and draw right up through your upper body, your torso. And keep this left arm straight. Here. And then you're going to drop your center. And we're going to do, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the 1, we're going to play our imaginary drum. Here we go. Butt cheek straight. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dong! Let's try again. Once again, straight up.
Use sound effects.
Yeah. So, don. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, hop, don. Nailed it. 1, 2, 3, hop, don. 1, 2, 3, hop, don. And 1, 2, 3, hop, don. Okay, so a little bit what's happening is when you play, you have to drop from your center. So you're tending to a little bit do too much of your upper, and you're going like this. And what happens is your forehead is now way over your center. So you're going to actually fall over. Yeah, so you don't want to do that. So it has to come from just dropping your hara, your belly. So one more time. Okay.
Credit for this.
Arm straight.
15 minutes. Using muscles I had.
That's good. Okay, let's do this right arm up again. And now we're going to alternate between right and left. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don. 2, left arm. Don. 2, 3, and don. 2, 3, 4, left. And 1, 2. And don. 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 And don 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 arms up and don 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 arms up don 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 don. One last one and don. Yeah. Well done, guys. Thank you.
Need something to keep me up.
Well done. Great, well done. And actually, there was just about the sound. Don, what sound? Not boom or bam, bomb, bang. It's don. And this is actually what we call this vocalization of the sound is, we call this Coochie shoga. And so it's lots of different syllables that imitate the sound of the taiko. And because it's largely an oral tradition, the music and the rhythms and so on is all transferred through the Coochie shoga, through singing the rhythms. And because we're playing our imaginary wadaiko, our big drum, the sound is don. On a small drum, the shimadaiko, for instance, we would say ten. So then, just referring back to the solo that was played before on the screen, you can and should be able to sing all the rhythms. So it could be something like don 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 stotsko don sko don 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 dokot ko don don stotsko don stotsko don dokon don dokon gotsko don sko don 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 dokotsko don don don, something like this. So that's the sound there. Whereas the smaller drum, as I said, one of the sounds, the sort of main open sound is 10. And so the 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 10, something like that. So that's just improvising something there. So learning those syllables is really important, and so then, one, you can have fun with it, and also, two, it's the important thing about the Coochie shoga is it's coming from inside your body, and it's an important, actually, concept for you as young musicians, is especially when you play an instrument as opposed to singing. With an instrument, it's external from you, but it's important that we kind of have a sense of the instrument being part of us and part of our body. And so a good way of finding that connection is through vocalization. And so getting back to the Coochie shoga imitates the sound of the taiko, but the taiko imitates the sound of the Coochie shoga. So you get this kind of cycle. And so, as I said, it's a great tool for transferring music. It's a great memorization tool, and in Taikoz we do a lot of that, where you just sing through stuff. You can, if you don't have your instruments there, but you need to warm up, or you're just trying to do a sort of just thinking, how does this bit go again? You know, you can just tap through and sing through your Coochie shoga, and then it's a matter of then transferring it to the instrument. So yeah, very handy technique. Any other questions before we? Yes.
I was just wondering about those traditional contexts and the role of women.
Yes.
Is it kind of a gendered thing traditionally, or?
Yeah, another interesting question about the role of men and women in taiko. There are some traditions where it's men only, and others where there are women play the taiko. There was one that I showed before. I'll go back a little bit. Here, you can see up in the top left with the Sansa Odori, that's all women playing there. Then you'll see something in the bottom right, the Chichibu Yomatsuri, that's all men. It's interesting, in Chichibu, the town is called Chichibu, just sort of northwest of Tokyo. Their Matsuri, I spent a week there a few years ago to learn and experience this incredible festival. And the festival itself is fantastic and very exciting with these wonderful carts and the fireworks, etc., and the drumming is incredible, all the sound. But I must admit that the week before was equally fascinating and certainly very informative. And one of my experiences there was when I was interesting because I was at my hotel, and the head of what they call the Hozonkai, or he's the head of it's like a Hozonkai is like the cultural property. So, and Mr. Takahashi, so he's responsible for the care of his festival and the music and so on. And that's handed on from generation to generation. So he came and met me at the hotel. I was waiting very nervously. And it's interesting because it was just a very brief hello, and I was just sitting at a table there. He immediately sat down, and he asked me to play the jiochi, which is the reference to the bass rhythm before, asked me to play the jiochi of their music, which I knew, but I had to play it for him because it has a very particular feel and flavour. And so initially he was saying, he was just checking out, okay, now this is very particular to Chichibu, and this is what you've really got to understand and appreciate and respect. So that was really interesting to have that experience and to kind of get an idea of the way they particularly interpret this bass rhythm. And then we went out, and I went to the practices, and they have what they call machi, or 6 districts. So there's basically 6 teams of carts and musicians that play and sit inside the cart. And I went to each of their clubhouse in Chichibu. And each district, the districts are not very big. You can kind of see the next lot just up the road there. So I went to the first one, and it was the clubhouse there, and there was a lot of the older gentlemen were inside the clubhouse, and they were in there drinking sake and beer and so on. And so I had to sit down and courtesy to speak to them, and I don't drink. Sometimes it's a little awkward in Japan, but a little sip of the sake and so on. But I kind of really wanted to get outside where they were practicing. So I could hear the drums, but of course it's respectful for me to be there with them. But eventually we did go outside, and so then it was the men of Chichibu, kind of the 30 to 40-year-olds, and they were playing, but also they had then their sons, the boys, then playing as well. So it was the older gentlemen. I'm sure they're talking about the good old days and probably how it's not as good now as what it was back then and all that sort of thing. And then the fathers and uncles and so on were teaching the young boys to play it, and so that sort of goes on. But it was interesting when I was there, I noticed off to the side there were some young girls playing the jiochi on the shimadaiko to the side. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't ask about it would have been impolite, but it was interesting that one of the members of our ensemble attended the Matsuri more recently, and apparently now some of the girls and women are now playing. So this is a break with centuries-old tradition. So I think some of those things are breaking down a little bit, and I think it has to do also with the fact that to keep traditions alive, you've got to get everyone involved and excited about it. And I think it was just probably a case of those things sort of changing more recently. So it's an example of that. Yeah. Yes.
You've done some very interesting collaborations, but I found that one with the Indian dancers and singers intriguing because your dancing, singing, and your drumming in each of the cultures would be very interconnected, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So I'm just thinking, how did you manage to collaborate? Were there things that were sort of common, or how did you put those two cultures together in terms of percussion and dancing?
It's an interesting question, and I did refer to how it's been a 5-year process. It wasn't easy, but with the South Indian dances, the thing about the South Indian classical dance is that it's incredibly rhythmic, and they base their dance, they all have an understanding of what they call the tals or the talam, which are beat cycles. So it could be 8 beats, 16 beats, 12 beats, 24 beats, 32, sometimes 7 beats, 9 beats, all sorts of different length rhythmic cycles. And that's kind of something, even though they have special words and concepts around that, but it's something that I could sort of latch onto. I sort of get this, I see. And so there was sort of it was a matter of finding the common ground fairly early on, and the fact that they were so rhythmical and kind of had understanding of rhythm and how it works in cycles and so on, we could start from there. But when I had to come and compose music for it, I really didn't know where to start. But Ananda Vali, the choreographer, she played me some drumming from like the traditional music to their classical dance. And basically what I did is I actually, because my understanding of it is fairly basic, but I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll transcribe it. So I listened to it and notated it and in Western notation, just to try and so I could sort of get an understanding of what was going on rhythmically. And from that, I didn't then sort of just kind of transcribe it and play that. What I did is I took just little thematic ideas that came out of that, and I thought, oh, actually, yeah, that will fit really well on the taiko in the terms of the language, the rhythmic language and body language and all those sort of things that I've been talking about, and develop the material from there. So when we got to, this is a long, lengthy process, but eventually what happened was then we felt entirely comfortable playing our instruments. It didn't feel like we were trying to do something that didn't quite fit. And similarly for the dancers and Ananda Vali in her choreography, she could also understand it as well, because there was a relationship there. We actually toured this production last year to India, which was a big thrill, and but I must admit I was very, very nervous about presenting what we do, because India has one of the most amazing musical cultures, and particularly in drumming. And in South India, it's the mridangam, which is a drum that they sit on their lap and play both sides, and very complex rhythmic structures. And I was afraid that we'd come out and what we did was either sounded wrong or didn't kind of fit. But generally speaking, we were really gratified to find a very positive reception, and the audiences certainly enjoyed it. And it was sort of interesting too, because I thought in the end, wow, they really did enjoy that. And in fact, to the point, there's a couple of moments where sometimes we'd come out and take a solo and really cut loose, and they all clapped. It was really exciting, almost like a jazz club or something. You play your solo, and it doesn't happen here. So that was great. But I think part of what it was is that because they come from a wonderful tradition of their own of rhythm and drumming, I think they just kind of got it. They really understood it. So yes, that was a good part of the process. Thank you. That was a composition of mine called Waves, and hopefully some of the wave concept got through during the piece. But this is an example of a contemporary work. I only composed this last year, and it's composed for essentially a very old form of taiko called katsugi okedo. So okedo, oke means barrel, it's a Japanese word for barrel, and do means body, like your body. So it means barrel body taiko. Katsugi is to shoulder, so hence the slung. So it often loosely translates as slung drum. It's a very handy taiko because unlike the old daiko that I mentioned, that's the one we can't carry around for things like this because it takes 8 men to get it up on stage. This one is very easy. I brought it in the car this morning, and I can carry it around, and it's very handy. So the shoulder strap idea. This particular instrument, though, is quite special because it's a new concept, a new design. Traditionally, the drum has the two skins, which are essentially the same pitch, so essentially the same sound. But just recently, this instrument was developed by a member of Kota, Masayuki Sakamoto, who was interested in actually getting more difference between the two skins and the two hands to see what we could to allow for more sort of creative possibilities. And I think that's a great idea, and particularly with the way, as a composer, sort of the way I kind of hear things, I thought, this could be really good to work with. So we use the katsugi okedo a lot in our performance, just the standard one with the two sides, which are essentially the same pitch. But when I knew that this instrument was coming out, I thought, I've got to get it because I think it's got some real possibilities there, musically speaking. So that's the sort of background of it. You can see it's rope tuned, and that's what I spent my break doing, tuning up. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes to get it tuned. And just going back to the barrel body idea, so underneath the black lacquer is essentially staves of wood, hence the name barrel, because it's constructed like a barrel. So they're basically staves that are then glued together. And it's very light wood, obviously, because it only weighs about maybe 10 kilos. So it allows for that there. And unlike the wadaiko, which is carved from a single tree trunk, hence it being so heavy. And this particular instrument, though, has its background in a very ancient festival called Tozan Bayashi. And it's essentially, in its original form, it's just played on the one side. It's not played on the other side. And it's used in quite a simple rhythm, used to accompany chanting. So getting back to this particular instrument then, here with the two sides, so you've heard the, and then from there, to be able to do that. So getting back to my composition, what I was exploiting there was just various rhythms on each side, so you can hear how that kind of works. So one of the patterns I used was a pattern of 3. And in the left hand on the low side, and then I bring in a pattern on the right hand in essentially duples or 2s. The right hand sort of hear that 2 figure, don 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 don, just 10 10 10 10, skadon don 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 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, that sort of feel. And then this is sort of the wave idea coming through. You can hear the other thing I'm exploiting is the tonal qualities by moving in and out on the skin, because you see here near the edge, you can hear some, maybe you can hear it out there, I'm not sure, but certainly I can hear the upper partials. can hear as you move in, you hear more of the fundamental tone of the drum. And then if you hit dead center, it actually gets this room ringing. I noticed as I was playing, the room really starts sort of resonating there as well. Although it's quite a dead sound there, so I don't like to use it too much, only for certain musical effect. I personally prefer more of the resonant sound. Then, rhythmically speaking, just getting back to sort of then, again, exploiting this idea, extending this idea, the left hand just stays in that 3 figure. Also in 3, but it's displaced, so it sort of fits in all the gaps. So both hands are in 3, but sort of displaced there. So you get that combination effect, which for me gives the wave idea too of it sort of building and then sort of tumbling over, and then like a wave, it starts to dissipate. So I then bring my right hand kind of in unison with the left hand to bring out. You hear this. Which is the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you'll hear then this is just a straight 3. But then once you hear that sort of sound coming through, I then displace that and I put it in the gaps of this one. And so it sounds like this. I'll go from one to the other. So the left hand stays the same. And this one, so basically this hand goes from, it's going from the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then I change it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's essentially going from that figure starting off the and then that idea of the wave then just gradually sort of dissipating totally. I then let the left hand just relax a little bit and it goes into another version of 3, but it gives the impression of a slower tempo. So, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Yeah, so it goes into that. But that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is a slower feel to the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Yeah. So the common denominator, rhythmically speaking, are there any percussionists in the audience? No percussionists, no drummers. Oh yeah, good, yeah. But anyway, for all you musicians, we all deal with rhythm, whatever instrument you play. Just to get technical a bit, the common denominator, if you think of it in terms of Western notation, I have notated it as 16th notes, and so what happens is the common denominator is the 16th. That's the thing that remains constant until that last figure where it goes to a triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, yeah. Then the other idea is you would notice some of this overhand playing there. And again, that idea of sort of rushing forward. So I referred to the Jo Haku idea in the first part of today's discussion about that slow, medium, fast. So that idea of idea of just pushing forward there. But what I like about this, again, with this drum, is you're hearing kind of like a melody through the 2 different tones. It sounds very different if I have the skins at the same pitch, and not, I don't think, quite as interesting there. And then probably one other distinctive feature, again, this idea of just sort of wave-like motions, is the one where we've got a lot of musicians in the audience, don't we? Yes? Yeah. So I used a device called metric modulation about 3/4 of the way through the piece, where I'll come back to that in a moment, but I'll just get back to this sort of other wave device. Here's where I was doing a click, at a slower tempo. And then I like this idea again of the jo haku, or more accurately, this is probably more of the oroshi feeling. Oroshi is that figure that we heard from the wadaiko player, that oroshi figure, very traditional rhythmic figure, Japanese music. So I kind of took that idea, but again, that sense of it sort of moving on faster and faster. So when I was working on that, I used the idea of polyrhythm. So it's the idea of playing across the beat. So if I take the stick out of it, the clicking sound, you hear it. If I take the click away, you hear it should sound fairly kind of organic. And when I was composing the work, I was thinking, how should I approach this? Because that's the sound I want. But but what I'm counting is what I do with the click. And I thought, well, maybe I'll actually make that sound and that feeling in my body audible. So then for you, the audience, you actually get a sense of, again, a little bit of more attention, because you're hearing the left hand, the low sound, getting faster over a constant beat in the right hand. So if I play that again, gives me my new tempo, which is actually the original tempo that I started the whole piece in. So I've gone from that slower tempo where I just picked up there, and then you can hear how it sort of gets faster, sounds like it's getting faster, and then that gives me my new tempo. And that brings me back to the main theme, which you hear at the beginning. So that bit where, again, to get a little technical, if that's okay, if I go through the polyrhythms, 3/5. Next one is 2/3. 2 in this hand, 3 in this hand. What's next? 3/4. 4/5. If I just sit on that one a little bit, maybe you can hear 4 in this hand and 5 in this hand. Try and just let your ear don't worry about the combination, just let your ear go, say, to the 4 and feel, and perhaps just try and feel that sense of the 4 pulse there. The 5/5 there. Then there's a brief moment where I actually join. It's sort of 1 and 1. Then it goes to 5 in this hand, 4 in this hand, and then eventually 4 in this hand, 3 in this hand. So that goes. That's 5 there, 4 there. Yeah. And then, as I said, that then, this is what we call a metric modulation. So that's giving me with the tempo. So basically I just take that hand out of it, and then I start to internally, I'm sort of feeling when I play this, I feel very much with that slower tempo, which is in my right hand. And then I then do that, and then my ear and internal feeling goes to the 1, 2, 3, 4. And just again, what I'm doing there is actually still using Polyrhythm as a device. Possibly, I'm not quite sure. This is the interesting thing when you compose things or the way you play and you hear things. That pulse is constant. That doesn't change through there. But I think it probably gives the impression that I'm suddenly slowing down and then speeding up again. I'm not quite sure if that comes across, and it doesn't really matter if it does or it doesn't. It doesn't concern me whether you do perceive that or not. But it rhythmically, it goes from this figure. That figure of messing around with groups of three. And little groups of two. So that idea there, so you can hear the two hands, the way they kind of work in combination. But then I can play exactly the same figure, but this is essentially the 16th is the basic pulse. And, actually it's sort of triplets and 16ths, you'll hear. So it basically stays there, just moving between triplets and 16ths. The only sort of real polyrhythm that happens there is just a big 5 at the end. Pulse still stays the same, where it suddenly feels like it's rushing forward, but the pulse is still. That's little groups of 5, but the common denominator is that idea there. So that's basically the musical material and how just displacing beats and playing the same figure, the kind of like the melody, keeping that same figure, but then playing it in triplets and 16ths and sometimes in groups of 5 and so on. So it gives this feeling. What I'm trying to create is this little push-pull feeling for you, the audience, the listener there, and hopefully to give a sense of forward momentum. So that's sort of a basic kind of idea of the piece itself. So any composers here? Yes? Great. And do you like working with rhythm? And sometimes, yeah, rhythm. Interesting too, like with rhythm and melody and harmony, you know, it's those sort of basic sort of building blocks of music there. It's interesting as drummers and percussionists, taiko players, etc. I think one of our jobs as drummers, percussionists, taiko players, etc., is to really get across the melody of things, because you know, I think sometimes we get a bad rap as drummers because it just sounds like one sound the whole way through, and it's kind of just rhythm. But I think it's we have to work, or it's incumbent upon us to try and actually get the melody to come through, so it doesn't sound so monotone, and try and get that sort of sense of rise and fall that you can get if you're playing, you know, a flute or a violin, a piano, or whatever instrument. And I think that's a real challenge because it's kind of hard when you essentially do just have one sound, or in this case I've got two distinct sounds. But that's why I like to work with working on the different sort of parts of the surface. Even the left hand, sometimes it's nice to get away from the centre. I play a lot in the centre because you get a nice bass fundamental tone. And I'm not quite sure if you can hear it from there, but there's actually, you can hear at least 2 tones there, so it sounds like a little harmony. Hearing upper partials there. So that way we can actually create harmony, and I think through what I've attempted to do through this is through different lines create a sense of a melody just moving through there. So even with my one drum, trying to, the rhythmic thing is obviously important because I've talked mostly about rhythm already in terms of its sort of structure, construction, but ultimately, like a lot of music, the rhythm is there to carry your melodies and harmonies forward. So that's a little bit of what I've attempted to do there. So any questions on that before I move on? Yes.
I just want to find out if it's skewed to a specific pitch.
No, it's not. And that has to do with the fact that these are natural skins and it's rope. So unlike, say, the timpani, actually, timpani often use, the Sydney Symphony they use natural skins as well. So I was going to say it's because of the natural skins, so it's not really true, because timpani, of course, are tuned to very specific pitches and beautifully in tune. But it has to do, I think, more to do with the tuning mechanism. In the case here, this is rope tuning. And also, too, the skins are very affected by the weather. And inside, it's also the air conditioning. So what happens is that it's very hard to predict. And because we're inside and the air conditioning's on, the skins dry out, so the pitch goes up. Essentially what I'm after, though, is to get as much difference between the high treble and the bass as possible. So actually what I was doing before I came on to play, I actually had a wet towel on this skin just to get more moisture into it just before I came on to get the tone down just that little bit more, because the air conditioning was bringing it up again. So yeah, a little bit of love and care required, but still quite a inexact science. Any other questions? Yes.
As a composer of that piece,
Yes.
how are you going, or how have you gone about making it available for other drummers to play? Is it notated?
It's fully notated, yes.
Fully notated?
Yeah, there's one little brief section of improvisation, but apart from that, it's all notated, yes. Yeah, so, and I've put a lot of articulations in and so on, but it's still like any notation, notation's not music, right? It's dots on a page. So it requires the performer to interpret those dots. And in my case, particularly when the notation essentially is just two notes on a staff, high, low, and so what I would be looking for if someone else played this piece is a creative performer who actually goes, oh, actually, it just says high and low, but, what's high? That. Actually, I can hear one slightly higher than the other, and, well, that's really different. But then I guess I would give permission, so to speak, for the performer, would encourage, perhaps there's a better word, encourage the performer to then actually work in around just those essentially two notes. But that's where it requires an intelligent performer to really literally read between the lines. Yeah. Yes?
When you were performing, you kept on turning it around, facing the bass.
Yep.
All of a sudden, the high pitch one. Why is that?
Yeah, good question, observation. So that's one thing I can do differently every time, according to what it's almost like a movie, if you watch a film or whatever, you're watching the director's viewpoint of the action. So it's a bit like, as opposed to, say, a play, so you see a play on stage, you can see the whole stage. But in a movie, you're seeing just that, the director's view of that. So essentially what I'm doing is going, oh, actually, it would be kind of cool if you guys hear more of my left hand this time, and sometimes the right. And then, but particularly for the first theme, it needs to be here, so you're kind of hearing it equally. So that's the sort of thing that I can change around. And I've worked, with my colleagues in Taikoz, and sometimes they'll say, oh, try it this way, it sounds better this way, or more interesting if you do it this way. So, and I'm still working on that. But that's the basic idea. Yeah. Anything else? No? Great. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
At the start, when you were only hitting that side,
Yeah.
you were dragging it up. What was that?
Oh, yes. So again, just trying to exploit and make a tune, because it's hard to make a tune on drums. So, especially one drum. So, so the idea here was to. So there's just that tone there. Already, I'll put the stick there, and you hear a difference in sound. And basically, what's happening, I'm not putting much pressure on there, but you see it brings out different overtones. And then what I like to do is I've got the octave now, or maybe it's 2 octaves above, but it's sort of unison. So I like to just sit there just for a moment and then quickly move off once we're there. So, and that's different, getting back to the tuning, that's different every time. So I don't know what it's going to be until I'm playing. So it's kind of nice to just be in the space thinking, oh, this will be interesting. You're going, not there yet. There. But the other thing is too, is if I can also push really hard. But I've chosen not to push too hard. One, because I just like to keep it relaxed and not force it too much. And also, the harder you push, the deader the sound comes. So I want to try and keep as much resonance as possible. So it's just a delicate touch there. Yeah. Great. So nothing else. Great. Thank you.